Live from a bunker in the heart of the Ozarks, a podcast that wonders if the Philly Bible has a John 3:16. It's Stiff Pop. Welcome to Stiff Pop Weekly, streaming live. Most weekends are available to download later in your podcast feed, unless, of course, you're a patron.
Patrons get perks.
Patrons get those perks. I'm your host, Aaron Dicer, and he's not a nerd. He's smart. It's Andrew Ormsby, ladies and gentlemen.
Oh,
Each week we'll talk about movies, television, and whatever else from the pop culture universe is on our minds. And please welcome our guest this week. When life gives him lemons, he makes lemon-flavored napalm. It's TT!
All right.
Good to have you back, man. Good to have you back.
Yeah, great to be back.
TT on his third appearance, I believe, on Sif Pop, and if you don't remember, is the Fox affiliate critic, I believe, in Cincinnati, Ohio, and does all sorts of fun stuff and runs a film festival and figuring all that out as we head into the summer and vaccinations and light at the end of the tunnel of COVID. And you got a lot on your mind, man.
There's a lot on my mind, a lot going on, but for right now, I just want to focus on the idea. I feel like, an SNL guest host. Am I getting into that stage where, like, I'm, am I earning something here?
No, we don't have any 5-timers jacket or anything like that. But maybe for you, TT, maybe we'll have to make one for your 5th appearance.
Whenever somebody is a regular on the show, I keep thinking in my mind, man, Aaron is trying to replace me. He's just, every single person, they're just, this is his way of doing interviews to see how well the chemistry works. So I like you, TT, but don't take my job. I need this for my Sundays.
I'm excited about the show today. A couple of Netflix movies that just came out. Concrete Cowboy's been out for a couple weeks, or basically a week. It's been out basically a week now. And then Thunder Force just came out. So I'm excited to hear your guys' thoughts on those. Of course, we'll do Buried Treasure, and we've got a BEC challenge on Idris Elba movies this week. So that's going to be fun. Before we get into any of that, though, the Oscars are coming up, and forgot to mention this last week, but that also means the Sposkers are coming up. So this has been a really fun thing we do every year. Last year, for the first time ever, we did a live broadcast reaction show to the Academy Awards called the Sposkers, and we are going to do that again this year. We don't know exactly what that's going to look like. But we are definitely going to be broadcasting live during the Academy Awards and talking about our thoughts on the winners, all that kind of stuff for the Sposkers. Now, the other part of the Sposkers broadcast is the contest. In fact, many would say it's the main part of the Sposkers broadcast. We have hundreds of people each year get in their picks for all of the categories in the Academy Awards, and one person will win. We even have a nice little tiebreaker that has to do with the length of the broadcast so that we can declare a winner each year. This is a battle between all of our listeners, all of our experts. TT, obviously, you are welcome to join. You'll be getting that email with the link probably this week to get your picks in. And it is that battle, and then it is also the Aaron versus Andrew battle that has become one of those things every year.
We are so close every single year. Every year, Aaron and we have I think it's at least 2 or 3 different picks, but every other pick is the same. So it comes down to those 3 picks to decide which of us is going to become victorious. And I think, what are we, a 3-3 or something like that right now?
I just happen to have the information up right here in front of me, Andrew.
Aaron, what? I'm actually really curious. What is it? How many times have I beat you?
We've only been keeping track since 2017 is when we've been doing actually the spreadsheet picks, that kind of stuff. So that's 4 years. Let's see. The overall winner the first year was me. And I had 17 right. You had 16 right. Let's see. The second year was 22 correct, and that still is a record for most picks picked correctly. that belongs to Andrew, who won the second year in 2018, both overall and over me. And you crushed me that year. I only had 17 right that year. I say only. That's generally a good score. It won the year before, but 22 is amazing. 2019, the overall winner was 18 out of the, I think at the time it was 24 or 26. I can't remember how many. They've removed a category this year. They combined the sound category, so that's going to be a little bit different.
Mixing and editing. They
combined.
It was always the same
categories.
winner every time, anyway.
No, it wasn't actually. That was kind of determined. Some of the races was how that one got split up a couple times. But anyways, the second year the high was 18. It was not Andrew or I. Neither one of us won in 2019. We both got 14 correct, and I won the tiebreak by 5 minutes.
Right. That's right. I remember that year.
Wow.
And then in 2020, someone tied the record and got 22 correct picks last year. And then I had 19 correct and Andrew had 17. So we are 2-2, my friend. I've won twice. You've won twice. But yeah, 2019 was the epic year where it all came down to the last pick.
And I remember you won because La La Land and the was it not
we both had La La Land for best picture.
Yeah, but that was the time. It was because that pushed the time over, is that whole kerfuffle with La La Land Moonlight, not that's yeah.
So anyhow, if you would like to participate this year, highly encourage. It's a bunch of fun. Then you can tune in and we'll have, updates on who's winning and how the scores are going and all that kind of stuff. The link is at the website. This is the easiest way I can tell you to get there because it's a Google form and the link has a bunch of characters and whatever. Go to sifpop.com and click up above where it says Sposkers. That's the easiest way to get there. That'll take you right to your picks, and you can get those in, and then we'll have a good time again this year. So yeah, 2 weeks from today, I believe, we will be doing the Sposkers. So yeah, fun times. Excited for it. Sifpop.com, click on Sposkers.
I can see TT has us look in his eye like, oh, this is gonna. I'm taking this year.
Yeah, I'm taking him down. Taking him down.
He's like, as soon as this broadcast ends, I'm getting on the algorithms. I'm gonna find out which one.
I'm usually on the other end. I'm the guy who's like, wait a minute, you do this for a living and you only got like 5 right.
This year could be interesting. There are some big categories that are really up for grabs. Actress and best picture both, I feel like, are more up for grabs this year than usual. So it'll be interesting to see. Now I could be wrong about that. So we'll see what happens. All right, let's get into the reviews, guys. Let's kick it off with Concrete Cowboy. Sent to live with his estranged father for the summer, a rebellious teen finds kinship in a tight-knit Philadelphia community of black cowboys. Concrete Cowboy is a Netflix movie. It stars Idris Elba and Caleb McLaughlin, Jarrell Jerome in there, who you might remember from some other things as well. Method Man making an appearance as well. And kind of I shouldn't say kind of a true story. It's definitely based on a very true aspect of Philadelphia and street cowboy culture there in Philadelphia. What did you guys think? Did you like it, love it, dislike it, hate it, or it was just okay? Andrew, why don't you go first?
I'm going to go with high side of okay, maybe. No, I'll commit low side of liked it. Low side of liked it. All right. Yeah. TT.
I'm a high side of liked it, coming very, very close to loving it.
Nice. I am firmly in the liked it category. So we're all in the liked it, but at different levels, which is really, really interesting. TT, you liked it the most, so you get to kick us off. What are some of your thoughts on Concrete Cowboy?
Well, and here's the deal. Part of this is going to just come from the idea that I spent over a decade in Philadelphia. So that kind of lets you know that I'm a little biased because I I know the city, and in particular, I know a little bit about the Fletcher Street stables and that community.
Oh, nice.
So yeah, it was really interesting to see that. And again, for me, to be quite honest, I feel like it's a coming of age story, but it's also for me just this really great story about love overall. There is the love between the father and the son that we see in Idris and Caleb there and their relationship as they're kind of getting to know each other. There's this love of, again, the Black cowboy culture in Philadelphia, which is a very strong element that comes out. It feels very real and authentic, mainly because they actually had real members of that community who were actually taking part in the cast, which is a
That
great
kind
thing
of
to
blew
see
me
as well.
away, to be honest. I was blown away when I realized that at the end, because
me
they're
too.
great. They're great in the movie. Yeah.
Yeah, that definitely, kind of helps with that authenticity of that community and everything that's going on. But there's also an even greater love of not just that particular community, but there's that story that you get from Idris's character as he's explaining to his son where his name comes from. And the jazz and the love of John Coltrane is such a Philadelphia thing as well. I can remember graduating from college and spending time in West Philadelphia and actually going to the home where John Coltrane lived when he was living in Philadelphia. They've been working to try to set that up as a museum. They would do concerts out of it. They did tours. I went with friends, and as a matter of fact, I even went on a couple of dates, taking my dates through that home, because again, I was a big jazz fan, loved Coltrane, and to have that connection, and for the city to have that connection, again, that kind of speaks to what Philadelphia is about in a lot of ways. Again, you get the usual Philly and the fans being kind of raucous or whatever else, but there's a real strong sense of love that comes out, and there's a reason why it's the city of brotherly love, and this film really captures that in every aspect that you can imagine, and it does such a great job with it. And I covered this on Fox 19 here in Cincinnati when it opened. And I guarantee you that everyone that saw that review, everyone was really excited about seeing Idris Elba. I kept telling everyone, though, that you may come for Idris, but I feel like you stay for Caleb McLaughlin, because I really loved seeing him in a completely different role than we're used to seeing him. He's not that little kid from Stranger Things anymore. He's grown up, and he's kind of maturing into a very different kind of presence, which we are able to see here, which is kind of, in my mind, kind of making me kind of think that, I wonder what he's going to give us next. But I felt that he grounded this in a lot of ways. And again, I was just as excited to spend time with him as I was with Idris throughout the course of the film. So yeah, that's where the extra love, if you will, came for me on this one.
That makes total sense. I echo a lot of what you said. I think the performances in this are top notch, really around the horn. I loved everything that everyone's doing here. I also think the emotion in this is really good, really well done. And a lot of that has to do with the performances, but it also has to do with the situations they're in. And really my only negative with the movie is kind of offset by the beauty of these emotional performances. And that is that the movie can feel cliche or tropey at times. Like, there are many things in this movie we've seen before. But I do think the way this movie presents it to us and the performances sell it notches this up above just going, I've seen this kind of movie before. Because you haven't really seen this movie before, even though there are echoes of, many other films that play in these same areas. So, I echo a lot of what you said. And then I would add, in addition to that, which it isn't familiar to me as it is to you, TT, but I just found the setting so unique, and that to me really kind of notches it again above kind of a run of the mill kind of movie. You just go, I didn't know this existed. I didn't know anything about this. This is fascinating stuff. And I love it when a movie can do that. Andrew, what are some of your thoughts?
No, that's exactly what it is. That's what puts this movie above, like, any others as far as uniqueness. The fact that this is a true story, that it's one of those that sounds so fantastical that you're like, I can't believe that this is a real thing. And it makes you want to know more as the movie goes on. You're like, I just want to know every possible thing I can about this Fletcher Street stables. This just seems so incredible. And it actually leads into one of my negatives, is because I didn't feel that I got to know that much about the Fletcher Street the Fletcher Street stables until the very end, whenever they're actually interviewing the real people and they're talking about how the Fletcher Street stables like saved them and helped them and like guided them through life and stuff like that. Man, you should have spent more time, I think, or I should say less time focusing on the relationship between Idris Elba and I almost said Coltrane, but there's less time on that relationship and more on what this community is about. I know that's not what I guess that's not what the movie wanted to be, but I think that the movie would have been better served if that's what it was about. My biggest negative. Oh, were you gonna say something?
No, go ahead.
Okay. My biggest negative with this movie is I think it is horribly, horribly shot. I think that the lighting is awful. I think that the camera angles are terrible. Everything is either shot in through things, like through cracks in windows, and it doesn't do a good job of building. It doesn't do a good job of building the environment to make it fully realized. Whenever I can't see everything, it makes it difficult for me to realize what this whole place is like. That's my biggest negative with the movie, is that I just couldn't see it. It's dark. It's shot like there's a couple action scenes, I guess you could call them, in this movie where I guess there's like fast pace, like a race, and then getting chased, and I couldn't tell what was going on. It was just so shaky cammed and like quick cuts and everywhere, and I was like, man, this would have been, I don't know what could have fixed that, just another cinematographer, or if that's just the stylization that they wanted to go with, but that really, really bothered me. I think
it probably is purposeful. A lot of that is purposeful, in that the idea of, if you use the cinematography to show wide open spaces, well, that's a typical Western. And what they're trying to say is, yeah, there are horses here, but this is still, cracked windows and, Philadelphia, and you know what I mean? Like so I think that's part of it is purposeful there. So I think it is a choice. Now that choice didn't work for you. And honestly, I didn't notice it. So I guess that means it did work for me, because it did its job. It wasn't noticeable. Although I guess if it's truly doing its job, it's adding to my experience, and I didn't notice that as well. But I do think it's probably purposeful. What do you think, TT?
No, I would agree with you that it feels purposeful, and again, it's sort of that contrast that you would expect from sort of that traditional Western wide open spaces. You're in an urban environment. You're in a city with row houses and those tight blocks. So yeah, it's focusing and narrowing that vision to a certain extent, because it's also letting you know that these the people that are living in this world, who may be dreaming of some sense of that freedom that you might get, they aren't, they don't have that freedom. So right. I think that was a very conscious choice. But yeah, I didn't really think about it honestly until this conversation either. So
yeah.
Well, hey, I mean, maybe it was. Sometimes you just have a movie where something sticks out to you, and then it's with you for the rest of the movie.
Sure. No, I've definitely had that happen before. Yeah.
And that was it for me. I do believe that the performances, like you say, are top notch or stellar. I want to talk about one scene in particular, and what I think is the most striking scene of the entire movie. And it's not a spoiler, but I'll just say it deals with a baseball field. And I don't know why, but that scene, I guess that's the transformative moment of the film, I guess you could say. And that scene, I felt that scene to my core. I got chills, and seeing a proud father and all that. I'm like, this is a great scene.
Yeah, no, I agree. There were two scenes that stood out to me. One was the baseball field scene that you're talking about, and the other was kind of the revelation of the Smush character. There's a scene where we learn the full scope of that character. That the movie I thought did a really great job of setting you up for thinking this character is the same character you've seen in every movie like this. That's there to drag things down or whatever. And really hides a lot of information from you, or enough information from you that when it reveals this moment, it's heartbreaking. There's like a real heartbreak to it and a real empathy to it. I really enjoyed that revelation of the Jarrell Jerome character in this movie. So that would be one that I would mention as well. That has a lot of those really cool emotional beats inside of it. So yeah. TT, what were some of the moments that or one of the moments that stood out to you?
Well, again, I feel like the consensus obviously for us is definitely that baseball park scene. Yeah, that's a powerful scene. And I think I've already mentioned the other one for me was, and again, it's an unusual scene because there's not necessarily a lot going on in it, but just that conversation between the father and the son. And again, the whole idea of the name and where it comes from and what it all means. And there's a lot more backstory that is being conveyed in there. We're being told an awful lot. But again, like I said, for someone who has that Philadelphia connection and understands sort of some of that larger history of the city, the Coltrane element in there, just for me, that was, it took me back to my memories of going to the Coltrane house. And understanding how vital that space is. And it's not a big, well-known space. So again, it's one of those things, it's kind of almost like inside baseball kind of stuff in a way. Like if you know that Coltrane spent time in Philadelphia and you knew about the house, then all of a sudden to hear about it and to hear about him, it's like, yeah, they're really tugging on you there. But again, there's a handful of people maybe that are going to know that. But I was one of those handful of people. And for me, that was like, yeah, that's good stuff. That's kind of rich and authentic. And it's telling you something that, again, most of the world doesn't know. And usually in those moments, what I'm hoping for is if you heard that and you didn't know it, then maybe you would be like, well, wait a minute, I need to go research John Coltrane and find out what was his life and his time in Philadelphia like. Why was that such an important thing? Why did they bring it up? It's those kind of moments that will, send you down a little bit of a rabbit hole where you're gonna really find something out, something that you didn't know, and that you'll be like, those are the things you'll want to share with other people, like kind of on the sly.
Yeah. Well, those personal attachments like that, they really validate the emotion that the scene is trying to give off. So that's really what that's.
Let's go ahead and do one last thing. If you've got one other thing you want to say about the movie before we move on, I'll kick us off. It's kind of a negative. I wasn't sure the dynamic, or let me just say the character work of the Method Man character worked for me. There are some pretty big movements that character makes in motivation and in action. And I don't know that the movie let me understand that enough for me to get it. So I'm not sure what that, I come away from the movie not sure what I'm supposed to get from that character. And I think that is, can be a little bit confusing, and maybe I just missed a part or whatever. But that character to me seemed a little bit too much used by the screenplay for purposes rather than for being an authentic human being. So that would be my one other thing.
Yeah, his motivations aren't earned, I guess you could say.
It doesn't seem to me they are. Yeah.
And then whenever the I guess you could say the revelation of that character, it just rings hollow. Like you just don't.
Yeah. It doesn't seem like, where did that come from in that moment? Yeah, that kind of thing. What about TT? You got anything else you want to say about the movie?
Same kind of issue. Again, I just had a conversation with someone about sort of the idea of how films use Black authority, and in this case, Black police officers, and you know, in a lot of ways, that the Black cop who, you know, we know is a performer who was a former rap artist is becoming a thing. It's kind of like, yeah, if you're a rap artist at a certain level, you know, where you may not be making music as much anymore, you know, your next career is to be a cop, either on a TV show or in a movie. Yeah. And I'm kind of looking at that, and I love Method Man, and I was just like, man, come on, you go from Luke Cage, where at the very least we understood the idea of who you were in Luke Cage. Right. And you're right. There's an awful lot of this character and the motivations. It's not about motivations at all. It's really just kind of about, okay, we need something to happen.
Yes, exactly.
And you're going to be the conduit to make these things happen for us, so that we can move the story along. And that's problematic. And I just kind of feel like, you know, Method, yeah, you gotta stay away from that. just stay away.
Now you have me thinking, like, okay, we got Ice-T, we got Method Man.
That's the rabbit hole that you go down. You start, you know, LL Cool J, who has really completely transitioned over, and it's just like, dude, like, there was a time when Mama Said Knock You Out, I never would have imagined that you would be the dude that you are now, and, you know, in the roles that you've played, and it's just like, okay.
Is there an alternate?
Even Ice Cube in 21 Jump Street was a cop.
Yeah.
So there we go.
Yeah.
Is there an alternate universe where Tupac and Biggie are still with us and, you know, playing cops in movies and television? You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
I think we're there.
It's interesting in that way. Andrew, did you have any last things you wanted to mention about the movie?
I think we talked about no post-credit scene, but I think we really covered everything.
All right, fair enough. The movie again is Concrete Cowboy. Sounds like it's a recommend from all of us. We all liked it in one way or another. Concrete Cowboy is on Netflix. Let's move on to Thunder Force. Two childhood best friends reunite as an unlikely crime-fighting superhero duo when one invents a formula that gives ordinary people superpowers. The movie stars Melissa McCarthy and Octavia Spencer, and then some others in there as well, including Jason Bateman in one of the major roles. This is, Netflix doing comedy. What do you guys think? Did you like it, love it, dislike it, hate it, or it was just okay? TT, you get to start this time. That is said enough.
Yeah. What are those categories again?
Liked it, loved it, didn't like it, hated it, or it was just okay.
Yeah, that's all I can get back to is I didn't hate it, but I definitely didn't like it.
All right, didn't like it. Strongly in the didn't like it category. Andrew, what do you got?
No, it's not a hate it. I know what TT's saying because it didn't infuriate me. This is it was a nothing movie. It was a nothing movie. So I'm going to go with just really didn't like it.
Yeah, right there with you guys. I considered saying I hated it, but you're right. This is not... Listen, I giggled at a couple of the lines. I think these people are occasionally funny. There's just nothing here, overall. I mean, this is a terrible movie. It's just a terrible movie.
It's a really bad movie.
It's just really bad. And so, yeah, I think I have to be with you on the strongly disliked it train. Which I think TT means you liked it best because you just said you didn't like it. We said we strongly disliked it. So guess who gets to go first? TT, tell us some thoughts on this movie.
Tell us why this is your number one pick for the Oscars.
Yeah, why you love this movie so much. Obviously, yes.
Okay, well, let me at least start with the one positive thing that I kind of got out of it. Yes, there are a couple of chuckles here and there, but to be quite honest, I wanted to embrace the idea that it felt like we were kind of seeing like a weird origin story for the Fantastic Four. The comic book nerd in me was there kind of like, okay, yeah, you've got this really smart woman who, has figured this, the whole DNA, the formula out. She's got her friend who's kind of like her Ben Grimm, becomes the muscle of the group. Yeah, I enjoyed the idea of playing with gender and some of those things along those lines. So that's the positive stuff that I'll say. On the negative side,
everything else.
Everything else, but I'm going to zero in on this one thing here. This is Melissa McCarthy and her husband, Ben Falcone. This is their 5th film together with him in the director's chair. Out of those 5 films, they've even co-written 3 of them because they were the co-writers on Tammy, the Boss, and Life of the Party. Life of the Party might be the best of those for me. And I'm looking at this one now, and to be quite honest, I never saw Superintelligence. So that was and I felt like I didn't see Superintelligence because I knew that wasn't going to be good, and I didn't want to have to cover it. So
right.
that pretty much tells you all you need to know about what I think about the idea of them working together right now. I see the idea that she takes this as an opportunity to maybe improvise and do her kind of fun riff on things, and he's there to kind of allow her the space to do that. But 5 times now, and again, the best that you can come up with is a movie that's just okay. And that's kind of how I feel about Life of the Party. That's the one, it was the most realistic of these films that they've done together. And if, like I said, if that's the best you can do, then maybe you guys shouldn't be working together anymore. Or at least like you shouldn't be working together with your husband in charge. Like there should be some other factor or voice in there to help kind of modulate or corral what appears to be the worst instincts of both of you working together.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of that. Here's what I'm going to say. I think in many ways we're seeing a very Adam Sandler type thing going on here, right? Mm-hmm. Where somebody finds a groove that is fun for them, that is easy for them. There's not a lot of friction to it. It's her and her husband making movies, writing stories, and then just having fun with their friends. Adam Sandler has done the same thing for years and is making millions of dollars from Netflix to do it, right? Like Sandler signed a huge Netflix deal to make movies that most of us who sit in critics' chairs or whatever say are bad movies. They're not great movies. And yet something about them connects to a certain portion of the audience enough that that there is value to Netflix or whoever to release them out there and have, content for those people. I very much think Melissa and Ben could be doing a very similar thing here. And to that, I say, go for it. Do your thing, whatever. You know what I mean? Like, just because I don't think you're making good movies, if you're having fun, if you're able to put food on the table by doing it, go for it. And when you do, I will sit here on that weekend and say it's a bad movie. That's my job. But you are doing your job. You know what I mean? Like, it's each their own. And to those who love this kind of movie, great, enjoy it, have a good time, laugh your butt off. I totally understand that that certain things hit people differently, but it doesn't work for me. I watch it and I think there are, there's a real same thing I would say about a lot of the Sandler movies. There's just a real laziness to them. And that word can be loaded in a lot of ways. All I mean by that is it's a lot of lowest common denominator, easiest route kind of stuff. And at the end of the day, if it works, it works. But yeah, I don't have a good time. I occasionally laugh. My love of Jason Bateman will get me through a lot. And that's kind of where I come out the other side. Andrew, what about you?
Oh, I didn't even like Jason Bateman in this. But I'll say this. I'm going to start with my positives, as I should. I think that the effects in this movie are fairly well done. All right. Yeah, they're
sure.
pretty good. Yeah.
Netflix has money.
Netflix does have money, and I think that's what it comes down to. But I think that if you're going to talk about comedy in this movie, I think that the comedy is all from the lowest side, grunts in this movie. Like Andy and Kyle and all those.
Oh, the henchmen?
Yeah, that's where I got my laughs, was the henchmen,
Yeah, sure.
Other than that, I don't think that I don't think Octavia Spencer and Melissa McCarthy have any chemistry at all. I did not buy that relationship for a second.
I think Octavia Spencer is horribly cast in this movie. I don't think
Yeah.
she works in this role, and I don't know why that is. I don't know what that is. I think she's an incredible actor. I just kept feeling like I'm not buying her in this character for some reason.
And this is going to sound awful, and I don't mean it to be, but it looked like she was Botoxed in the face because she wasn't giving any reaction or emotion. She had a deadpan face throughout the entire movie, and I'm like, can you do something? You show me some sorrow, some joy, anything to let me know that you're the Octavia Spencer that I've loved for so long. And there's forced relationships in this that are totally unwarranted. I'll just talk Jason Bateman. I'll just say that whole relationship, it's built on absolutely nothing. That it's what, and normally I'm with you normally, Aaron, where I could say I would love Jason Bateman in anything, but not here.
Can I just say, you may hate me for this. This is my favorite part of the movie, was Jason Bateman and Melissa McCarthy. I don't know why. It just worked for me. I just thought it was hilarious. I thought that dinner scene, I died like a couple times during that dinner scene. It just got me for some reason. I'm human. Sue me.
Hey,
I don't know.
I'm not mad that you liked it. How dare you, Aaron? No.
Anyhow, but yeah.
Live your truth.
I'll live my truth. That's right. I'll live my truth. Yeah, I don't know how long we want to spend on this, how much we want to go into detail. But let's go ahead and can kind of continue on any of the other thoughts you might have, because I don't want to short circuit any conversation that we might want to have about this movie, but I think we're all pretty much in the same boat with it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we are. Although I will admit, hearing your comparison with the Sandler films, I do get that, and I'm totally in agreement with you on the idea of it, that yes, they have found a groove, whether it's Bateman or, any of the other actors who are kind of part of their worlds that they've been able to kind of build in, that, yeah, you can come in, we can have fun, we can shoot a film, we can do this. And yes, there's going to be an audience out there for it. I think it'll be curious to determine, though, based on these 5 films so far, have they hit that same point that Sandler was able to hit, which allowed, someone to say, okay, yeah, I'm going to continue funding this because there's something that we can make something off of this. I don't necessarily feel they're quite at that level with it yet. But who knows? And again, if they do, you're right. Basically, it means that they'll continue. If it's Netflix is going to keep giving them the money to do it, they'll keep putting them out. And when one way or another, we'll be able to keep sitting on the sidelines. So when the films come out and talking about them and saying, yeah, okay, this didn't work for me.
Yeah.
And that's the gig. So if they're able to do that and keep it going, more power to them.
Yeah. And we'll be right here to tell them exactly how we feel about it.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
She also, Melissa McCarthy in particular, also has this kind of Sandler thing where she also pops up in serious movies every, couple of years, and that's, I find that really fascinating and interesting. And, I'm trying to think of the last, Can You Ever Forgive Me? Maybe the last one with the more serious role. I can't remember if there was something after that.
Yeah.
But that was a couple of years ago, that wasn't too long ago, and she's great in it. I consider myself a Melissa McCarthy fan at times when she's doing stuff like that. In the same way, I consider myself a Sandler fan when he's doing more in-depth stuff. So yeah, I take my role seriously as somebody who people look to and go, hey, tell me if this movie is something I might like or I might not like. Like, I take that seriously, but at the same time, I take it lightly enough to know everybody's different. Like, if there's no shame in loving a movie like this. If you do, if you have a great time, go have a great time. Pop up, open your Netflix, and have a good time. It's just, it's not for me. And that's, at the end of the day, that's just my loss. So, yeah.
Yeah, this movie made me feel like I was eating raw chicken.
Well,
by the way,
considering this
do not
movie,
eat raw
you may
chicken.
have to clarify.
That's true.
That is a very
true.
positive thing in this movie. So
Yes.
Kids do not eat raw chicken.
let me introduce you to my friend Sal, last name Manila. So yes. Thunder Force is on Netflix. Andrew, did it have any post-credit scenes? I don't remember any.
No. There was no
post-credit scenes. No. Well, there you go. Thunder Force is not a recommend for me, but to each their own. To each their own. All right, let's move on to the best ever challenge. Actually, before we do, huge shout out to our amazing Sif Pop members. We love you. We appreciate you. We have recently begun to be more diligent about the content that's appearing on your Sif Pop membership in making sure we get you those bonus episodes on time. We have been through some real changes behind the scenes as far as people who are working on that and doing those kind of things. And we believe we're in a place now where your membership will be well worth it and fulfilled. Those bonus podcasts we record are always there. But we should be able to get those to you quicker. And thank you for your patience as we've kind of gone through the last couple months and kind of getting things back on track. This week, we talked about our thoughts on what comes next for movie theaters and streaming as we see light at the end of the tunnel with COVID. Have things changed forever? We had a good discussion with TT on what the future might look like and how things have changed and whether or not they've changed for the good. So yeah, if you want to be a Sif Pop member, go check it out. Support starts at $3 a month. If you want the bonus podcast, I should clarify this every week. But I often forget to. That's the $5 a month level. So that's where you get the bonus podcast, those kind of things. And you can do all that at patreon.com/siftpop, patreon.com/siftpop. And thank you very much for doing that. All right, let's move on to the best ever challenge, best ever Idris Elba movies. We will go from number 5 to number 1. If you have something ranked higher, you can trump it, and we will talk about it when we get to the highest ranking is when we want to talk about it. So TT, why don't you kick us off? What's your number 5 best Idris Elba movie?
I am going with Obsessed. With number 5. Yes. And again, to be quite honest, I think it kind of speaks for itself. You've got Ali Larter, Beyonce, and Idris Elba. Like,
that's just
now all you need to know are the names.
What else do you need to know? Yeah, that's a lot of pretty people. There's a relationship there. There's the other woman who's going to come in and try to break things up. And then, of course, you're going to have the clash. And it gives you all of that in the cheesiest of ways. It gives you, the glorified sort of cat fights and the whole deal. It's got everything. And it's got Idris kind of hanging out on the sidelines as the object of everyone's attention in there. It's one of those movies. It feels like, the high class Lifetime movie that if it's on a weekend and I'm in the house, even whether I'm by myself or with my wife, if it's on, I know we're going to watch it. We'll come in wherever we are in it. And it's a film that we can share together for those things because it's just fun.
I can't.
So
it's really early on in his career too. 2009 is when Obsessed came out. So I know he'd done Rock and Rolla before that. I had seen him in. But not many of the other things that I guess 28 Weeks Later.
Right.
For that as well.
Which?
Oh, look what I did! Accidental transition. Andrew, what's your number 5?
No, actually, it's 28 Weeks Later. Wow. Man. You know what's funny? I don't remember him in this movie. I really don't remember him in this movie. I remember Jeremy Renner. I'm having trouble picking out the scenes with Idris Elba. But regardless, I love this movie. And you know what? Making this list got me excited to go back and rewatch it because this movie is banana hammocks. I think that there's no way I'm in the minority here, but 28 Days Later is a better movie. But this is still really good. this is still really fascinating. I just like the whole 28 universe. I know they've only done 2 movies, but the rage virus, it's something. It's a fun way to make zombies not zombies. It's a gory, bloody, fun movie.
What is this movie, Andrew? What did you say? This movie is Banana Hammocks? Is that what you said? Isn't that the name for like a Speedo? What are you even doing right now? Banana hammocks? What is this?
Never heard that.
I never seen the bananas or something like that.
No, it's like it's the exclamation on bananas. Is the bananas? Is it bananas? No, it's banana hammocks.
Okay, fair enough. All right, I'll believe you. I will absolutely believe you. Let's see. My number 5 is Jungle Book. Nice. I have that at my number 5. I really enjoyed this. And it's interesting because we've had so many Jungle Book movies. I say so many. We've had like 3 over the last, decade or so. And then of course the big Disney one before that. That is a lot. Yeah.
And we also had the other real live action one too, with Lena Headey and
right.
What's his name?
Yeah. But I really enjoyed this. I thought the voicing on all the characters was really well done. I really like the way this movie kind of adjusted some of the thematics about fire and some of the different things it did with that. I really had a good time with the Jungle Book, and I wanted to mention that one for my number 5.
You see, if Jon Favreau would have taken the same art style that he used in this for The Lion King, I think it would have been a much better movie. Because you see the emotion in with the animation of these animals in this version. I will say that if I have to pick my Jungle Book, I do think that I like the
Andy Serkis.
The Andy Serkis one a lot better.
It's really good.
Yeah, it's really a lot darker. It's a lot darker than this one. But
I, when it comes to the discussion about public domain, I think we more need to talk about things like Jungle Book or Sherlock Holmes or things that are in the public domain that get used by multiple different, companies in multiple different ways. Is that a bad thing? I feel like that's the point of public domain, is to be able to have more people tell stories from universes we love, right? And I think we have so far transitioned into this idea of ownership is forever when it comes to content rights, IP rights. That I think we've kind of been a little bit duped, maybe even gaslighted a little bit to, kind of bowing to more of a commercialized pressure than understanding there's a reason public domain exists, and we should quit extending it for these big IPs. It should go to artists to be able to do stuff with it that they want. So there's a reason we have a couple great Jungle Book movies, because it's public domain and people can tell that story. So yeah,
I think that the issue that people, and I totally agree with this point, is, and I agree with what you're saying, Aaron, is that when it comes to public domain, production companies are very selective on what they will use. Like you'll see 15 Jungle Book movies before you see one Metropolis. It's just like they keep going back to what they know works instead of taking a risk on another old IP that's public domain. Well, I guess that doesn't even make sense. I call it IP.
Right. Yeah.
It's not.
Yeah. I think it would encourage risks as well, because if you're going to lose your war horses, if you're going to lose the IP that you've counted on for so long, you have to find new stuff that will not be in the public domain for a little bit, that you can, monopolize for a while. So yeah, it's become a pretty big topic for me, that idea of public domain and owning content and that kind of stuff. But because I think we're going to have to wrestle with it in the next few years. All right, let's move on to our number 4s. What do you got, TT?
Prometheus.
That's my honorable mentions.
I go with Prometheus. And again, this is I'm choosing weird reasons for going for some of these, because I felt like I chose slightly unusual Idris Elba titles here. But I have to go with Prometheus because he gets to follow in a really rich tradition of the sacrificial black character in an Aliens film. That world for me is such a rich and ripe world. And again, I say that looking at the idea that we just lost Yaphet Kotto, who was the first guy to start this chain. So again, yeah, I'm looking at that and I'm thinking, wow, like, you're in good company.
What a long and storied history.
Yeah. And you knew literally from the moment he appears in the film. Like, it was one of those things. I'm just like, yeah, he ain't gonna survive long. And again, he does the noble thing to try to save everyone, but you're just like, man, just knew that was coming.
Yep.
I think
I spent the whole movie waiting for that.
I think whenever you talk about the alien and the xenomorph universe, you have to think it's not who's gonna die, it's who's the one person that's gonna live. Who is the Ellen Ripley of this movie, So yeah. But God, that was funny. That
horror movies and alien movies.
Time-honored tradition of the sacrificial black character. Oh my God.
Yeah.
Andrew, what do you got at number 4?
I am actually going to go with a movie that doesn't really feature Idris Elba in it that much. I'm going to go with American Gangster. This is definitely a Russell Crowe, Denzel Washington movie. I will say that the big scene with Idris Elba, it is shocking, where you have Denzel just walking out of the restaurant to go and talk to him, and then walking back after he deals with him. It's a crazy story. I love these based on true event sort of tales, and it's also a crime drama. So it's ticking all my boxes of things, and I think that Russell Crowe's given a good performance in this, but really Denzel is just nailing it out of the park. It's really good movie. I think it's actually overlooked.
It is a little bit overlooked. American Gangster is a little bit overlooked. I agree. My number 4 is Molly's Game. I think I enjoyed this more than a lot of people did. Sorkin, I think rightly so, in this movie got criticized for not being able to direct his own writing. He's much better at crafting the writing side of things and understanding how to cut the story side of things on the director side. But boys, he's learning, and he's learning fast. And I think you do see some talent even in the direction here, even though there's lots of learning to go. But the writing is still so sharp, so much fun. I'm a huge fan of poker. I love playing poker, so there's that aspect to it as well. So yeah, I was kind of always going to love this movie no matter how it came out, dealing with Sorkin and poker. I mean, but yeah, I ended up loving it quite a bit. So Molly's Game comes in at number 4 for me.
It's funny because last night I actually watched the Bad Brad Harlan going tilt scene.
Oh yeah.
I don't. It just popped up in my YouTube recommendations. I'm like, oh, I'm watching this because I love that scene. It's great.
Yeah, definitely. All right, on to number 3s. TT, what do you got?
All right, guilty pleasure alert. It's Fast and Furious Hobbs and Shaw.
Oh, got some Hobbs and Shaw in there. Nice.
I'm a huge fan of the whole franchise. It's, again, my total guilty pleasure. But I love it in this case even more because if we're going to talk about Idris Elba, you have to talk about the idea that if you've got The Rock and Jason Statham, you had to have a personality that could match them. And weirdly enough, it is Elba in a lot of ways. He's not exactly, necessarily on their level, but there's something about his presence that just lets you know that if there's going to be someone that they would have to go up against, he's got that. He's got that vibe about him that he could handle that. So yeah, it's a nothing role. They come up with what I think is really kind of a cheap way to kind of get rid of him in the end that doesn't really serve who he is. But I was just glad that he was there.
Yeah.
So yeah. So I that's number 3 for me again. Total guilty pleasure, and it's another one of those that if it's on, I'm gonna watch it any chance I get.
I don't blame you. I like the Fast and Furious movies, and I enjoy Hobbs and Shaw as well. That's a fun one. Andrew, what do you got at number 3?
Oh, gonna start a howl. I'm going with Zootopia.
Yeah, I'm gonna trumpet. I'm gonna trump Zootopia. My number 3 is Pacific Rim. Is what I have at number 3. Speaking of guilty pleasures,
all the way up at number 3. That's fascinating.
Wow,
it's a fun movie.
It's really fun. And not only is it really fun, and maybe I'm stretching here, but I think there's some really interesting things that this movie is doing with team dynamics. One thing I noticed the first time through is that each of the pairs are a different type of relationship. And the movie is speaking about like, what does a relationship with a brother and sister look like? What does a relationship with a parent-child look like? What is a relation? Like there's some really interesting things it's doing with and the whole point of these mechs is that you have to operate together. You have to learn to work together and work. So thematically, this movie meant something to me, and I found it really interesting. In addition to the fun, cool, robots
giant
punching
robots.
each other, kind of thing.
Giant robots.
So,
kaiju.
I think Pacific Rim is really good. I really do, and it comes in at my number 3. So there you go.
I don't blame you.
Number 2, TT. What do you got at number 2?
Number 2 is Marvel, but not Marvel all at once. I'm going with The Losers.
Oh, okay.
I have always enjoyed The Losers. Again, it's one of those, for me, it's an underrated kind of film. It's in that graphic novel, comic book kind of world. And the great thing about it is, like I said, it's Marvel, but not Marvel, because you've got Chris Evans and Zoe Saldana in there together, along with Idris, who is, of course, in the Marvel universe as well. He's actually getting ready to cross over into DC. So again, you've got all of those kind of elements going on at once. But it feels, and again, it was supposed to feel a little bit like, the A-Team and some of those kinds of stories as well. And it does that in its own kind of fun, gritty, not necessarily taking itself all that seriously kind of way. It's got a lot of action, but it's not necessarily trying to go, full on John Wick or Taken or anything like that. It found its own little niche along the way. And it was one of those, to be quite honest, I kind of always wanted to see more in that world, because it was unlike some of those other action blockbuster kinds of films that we had gotten. And I was a little sorry that we never got to see more.
Nice. I've never seen the movie. I've never seen this one. So
it's bonkers.
that's total.
Is it banana hammocks?
Thank you, Andrew.
You know what? He's right. No, it is banana hammocks.
Yeah.
Thank you. Appreciate that very, very much. All right. So yeah, The Losers. That was your number 2, correct?
Number 2. Yep.
So Andrew, we are at your number 2.
If we were going based solely off performances, I think this is his best performance. I'm going Beasts of No Nation.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna kick that one.
Oh, TT coming through. That means it's time for my number 2, which was trumped by Andrew. My number 2 is Zootopia. I think this movie's fabulous. I honestly think, because of the shadow of Pixar, Disney Animation's new era doesn't get as much of the love as it should. It's really interesting to me. I think everybody knows these movies are great. Zootopia is great, Frozen's great. Like, they just keep releasing great movies. I think it's mentioning Jason Bateman, so good in this. Like, there's just so much fun in this movie, and it's just so well done. I really have a great time with Zootopia. So that comes in at my number 2. Andrew, you had it at number 3. Is that correct?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
What are some of your thoughts?
It's just something fascinating about an other world. Like, it's everything is pretty much the same, except you just replace it with animals instead of humans. And how that dynamic is changed. Because it speaks to a lot. Metaphorically with like race relations and stereotypes and stuff like that. It's especially stereotypes when it comes to like carnivores, and the herbivores in this world. It's really interesting to see, what this movie is subtly trying to say, and yet not so subtly. On top of it being a super hilarious movie.
It's really funny. That sloth scene is one of the funniest things ever to be on screen.
Oh yeah.
So good.
That
was really good. That was a good impression. If you're listening to this on the audio podcast, you have to go to YouTube and check out Andrew's sloth impersonation. All right, time for our number. Wait,
Ones.
that was that. So, oh yeah, we just did my number 2. That's correct.
Yeah.
TT,
Yeah.
we know what your number 1 is. Tell us about Beasts of No Nation.
Yeah, and again, I feel like we already started off. Yeah, I would say this is probably the strongest performance we've seen from him.
Mm-hmm.
Him being Idris Elba on screen. And to be quite honest, the other part of it that I find really fascinating too is I feel like this is the film that kind of jump-started the idea of Netflix in the awards season world.
Yeah, totally.
It didn't necessarily really get the traction that people were expecting it to get, but I remember when it played in Toronto that year. I remember seeing it there. As a matter of fact, I saw Idris and the cast. Everyone was there. I think that I actually saw the public screening of it at the festival, the first public screening, and yeah, you got the sense that people knew that this was the start of something, both for him and that cast, and also for Netflix as a whole. So yeah, there's an awful lot to kind of latch onto here. The other thing in terms of Elba and his performances, I don't necessarily want to compare him to Denzel in any particular way, because Denzel is kind of in a completely different class. But I have really enjoyed and appreciated the idea, even looking at like my list of films, as part of this challenge. He's definitely kind of moved, whether it's, he can be the good guy sometimes, he can handle, a more villainous kind of turn. He's willing to embrace and to try a little bit of everything. And again, just looking at this, all of our films that we've been talking about, he's been in animated stuff. He's done big, he's big tentpole kinds of things. He's been in Marvel movies. He's bouncing around. He's exploring all of these different things. And again, part of it, as we've been focusing on it, we haven't even talked about the stuff that he's done on television.
Right.
So he's got an amazing filmography that shows and sort of spotlights all of the different facets of what he can bring to the table. To say that this, Beasts of No Nation is the strongest and the most serious of the bunch, gosh, it says a lot about that film. But like I said, I feel like it also just says an awful lot about him.
Yeah. I agree. I totally agree.
I like what Jay Bourgeois said in the chat. It's not an easy movie, but it's powerful, and also it's an important movie. So.
Yeah. I totally agree, and I'll be honest, it's not on my list because I just totally missed it. I totally when I was looking through his filmography, I just totally forgot about it. Otherwise, I think I would have had it on there pretty high. So
correct me if I'm wrong. This is Netflix's first feature film.
I don't know if it's I think they had some docs maybe before it. But it's definitely close. It's definitely close. This was Carrie Jo Fukunaga. Yeah, Fukunaga. Yeah. It's definitely back there for sure. All right, Andrew, what is your number 1?
My number 1 is a movie where Idris Elba has 12 words and then he dies. I'm going with Infinity War.
Yeah, that's my number 1 as well. Yeah. Yep.
Hey, thanks for putting in the work there, Elba, so I could get this movie on my list. Yeah. What could be said about Infinity War that hasn't been said by us or millions of other people?
Well, we could say the same thing we say every time we talk about it, which is, we think it's the better of the 2 finishing movies. We think it's better than Endgame as a complete film.
Yeah.
And that it does some of the bravest things that Marvel has, done in their series. So yeah, we kind of repeat that kind of stuff every time we talk about it. But man, this movie is just so good. It's so good. Yeah. So that's all we need to say.
Yeah. It cemented Thanos as one of the greatest villains of all time. And I don't know why Marvel can't realize from their successes, you need to have a villain like Thanos or a Killmonger where you sympathize or at least understand what the villain's motives are. Don't have a villain for the sake of having just a bad guy. With Killmonger, I understood why. I didn't agree with what he was doing. I understood, and it was coming from a place that he thought he was doing good. And that's even more exacerbated by Thanos, where Thanos thinks he's helping. And that's what his conviction is. Like, I know that you all don't understand, but I promise you, I am helping. It may seem hard, but I'm doing the right thing. And that's something that makes for a fascinating villain.
Yeah.
This is Thanos. Yeah. This is Thanos' movie. It's not an Avengers movie. It's a Thanos movie.
Yeah. I am waiting, and this is kind of beside the point, but, it's my show. I'll do what I want. I am waiting. I am waiting for Marvel to truly wrestle with the decision to bring people back after 5 years. Because we've talked about this before, but when you really think about it, that is a morally ambiguous decision. That is not a clear-cut right thing to do, because you're dealing with people who have already mourned the ones they've lost for 5 years and have moved on with their life, possibly remarried, or, whatever can happen in a 5-year span. To set those people back it's not a cut and dry moral right thing. And I would love to see Marvel have maybe a villain, to your point, who says, what would it be any difference to me than setting it back, 5 years before that, whose idea was, when you made this choice, you destroyed my new life and took away so much work I had done. And so, and to even think about the fact of, it's not just great people you're bringing back after 5 years.
Yeah.
You're also bringing back horrible people. So I don't know. It's just, and I'm not saying that makes it wrong. I'm not saying that makes it right. I'm saying Marvel hasn't really wrestled with it yet.
No, that is a fascinating story element that is untapped, which I guess they're kind of touching on it in Falcon and the Winter Soldier a little bit. Just a little bit. You're right. Just a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see kind of if they're willing to really grasp with, because they really can't. If you honestly think about it, and maybe years from now they really can't in any way indicate that it might have been a wrong decision for them to do that. They did. I mean, it was the whole basis of the entire end of that first saga. So it would be difficult to pull off.
I think that would be the villain's motivation, but I don't think you'll ever see one of the heroes admit that it was the wrong decision, especially with the sacrifices. We can talk spoilers for Infinity War, right?
I think it's been long enough.
Tony dying and, Cap, growing old. I mean, I don't think you would ever see any of the heroes from Marvel say, I don't think it was worth it. I don't think they should have done it.
It would be tough to do.
Yeah.
Well, there you go. There's our top 5 best ever Idris Elba movies. I had a couple of honorable mentions. Yep. I would just throw out Finding Dory, which I like more than most people, but that maybe just been Pixar love. And then also Star Trek Beyond. I wanted to mention as well. I do like those new Star Trek movies. So Andrew disagrees, but
no, just that one.
Oh, that's the only new Star Trek that you don't like, is the Star Trek Beyond?
Yeah, I like all the others. I love the first one.
Yeah,
and I really like Into Darkness. I want to throw out Rock and Rolla. This movie is it's banana hammocks. It's I love a lot about this movie. I think the one thing that we talk about, all of his movies and the things that he gets right, but I don't think we were really talking about chemistry in his movies. And it's just this is like, everybody's perfectly cast in this, from Tom Hardy to Gerard Butler, Idris Elba, those 2 Russian guys that won't die. It's just, it's a great movie. I don't get me wrong. I think that whenever you think of everybody's going to say Snatch and Lock, Stock are better movies, because those are like the first 3. But Rock and Roll is good. You got,
Very nice. TT, did you have any honorable mentions?
Yeah, my honorable mentions again are really more on the TV side. I can't get over the idea that we're talking about a guy who was featured on The Office. He had Luther, and then, for me, the end all and be all of all television is The Wire.
Mm-hmm.
And Stringer Bell is going
iconic.
to be
Yeah.
the iconic character that, again, if I had to do, like, I hate to say it, but at some point in time when he's no longer with us and we've got to do that memorial reel for him,
Stringer Bell.
it's not a film role, but I'm like, you got to include Stringer Bell in there. You really have to, because that's the one performance that kind of kicks it all off, that we would look at and we go like, oh yeah, that's it. That's Idris Elba.
Yeah.
So
yeah, no, I totally agree. I think that's well worth mentioning as well. All right, let's move on to buried treasure. What is that one thing in any area of pop culture that you want to make sure people know about it? I'll kick us off. The Empty Man is a movie that came out a while back. Just getting around to see it. If you know anything about me, you know I don't enjoy horror movies. And this is definitely a horror film, but I had enough of my horror film loving people say this might be one of the horror films that you might enjoy. And here's what I will say to those who said this was a horror film I might enjoy. I 100% understand why you said that. There is a lot of deep thinking in this movie if you want to go there. There's philosophy stuff about duality. There's philosophy stuff about reality versus fiction. There's all sorts of really interesting conversations you could have coming away from this movie. It also is pretty daytime horror for a lot of it. In other words, it's not all darkness and horror tropes and jump scares and all those things that I'm just like, I've seen this a million times. I get, that this is scary. That's not, there's something more to that here. There's an actual story that takes place with actual human beings, talking to each other about things. Having said all that, I did not really enjoy myself, but it primarily comes down to the fact that I don't enjoy that. I don't enjoy the exploration of fear and darkness for its own exploration. And that's a lot of what is absolutely going on here. So I can look at it and go, I think this is a good movie. That's what I would tell you. I think this is a good movie. It's just not for me. And it didn't quite cross that line that something like Get Out maybe did, or, some of the other...
It Follows.
It Follows. It Follows definitely crossed that line for me, where I was like, oh, I love this. I really, I get that this is a horror movie, but the things that it's doing are really, really interesting. Empty Man didn't quite get there for me, but I wanted to put it out there because so many people told me they thought it was one that I might enjoy. So all that to say, if you like horror movies, I'm almost sure you'll enjoy this movie. I know it's kind of developed even a real cult following since it came out last year, and more people are talking about it. But if you don't like horror movies, I don't necessarily know that you would enjoy this one. So The Empty Man is my buried treasure. Andrew, what do you got?
I am going to go with something that is totally insane. Hopefully it's queued up, but here is a new song by Amy Winehouse. Just a little quick sample of it.
Are we playing music now? I don't know that he would have the ability to. I mean, he'd have to add it
to him. Yeah, I sent it to him in the email. Okay. Well, imagine you just heard a great song. This is totally, this whole thing was, going to boil down to this. There's a new Amy Winehouse song out called "Man I Know." Here's the crazy thing: the entire song, lyrics, vocals, instrumental, everything was created by artificial intelligence. The entire song. It's something that I think is called the Lost Tracks of the 27 Club. So what it is they took famous artists who passed away at 27, like Nirvana, Amy Winehouse, Jimi Hendrix, Jim Morrison, and they created new songs. I guess Google has a program called Magenta, an AI program called Magenta. They took all of Amy Winehouse's songs, they uploaded it into this program, and based off of repeating rhythms, patterns, and vocal analysis, stuff like that, they were able to create new songs with artificial created lyrics, everything, and it sounds so real. It's creepy how real it sounds. I was Phil, no, that's not your fault. I was really hoping that he would be able to play that, and then I would be like, surprise, it's a computer. So.
That's kind of cool. It's all very amazing and fascinating, and also scary at the same time. There's all that element of technology. Every technology that's come, every technology that is to come, can be used for amazing, fun purposes as well as nefarious ones. And so it's fascinating to me. Yeah,
that's what I was going to bring up. Is every now and then you get you see something like a leap in technology that you just weren't ready for, like I didn't know that this was possible, and it's kind of creepy, but at the same time it's fascinating because the song, especially the Amy Winehouse song, the Nirvana song, not so much. Jimi Hendrix is actually really good, but the Amy Winehouse is like shockingly good. So if you just go on YouTube and you type in "Man I Know Amy Winehouse," that's the AI song. It's good.
Yeah,
fun stuff. What do you got, TT? What's your buried treasure?
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm writing that down so that I'll be ready for it after this. Yeah, my buried treasure is actually one that I've already spent time talking about this week on Fox 19. It's technically a little connected to Concrete Cowboys too. I go all the way back to 30 years ago for Boys in the Hood. And in a lot of ways, as we were talking about, and I remember, the earlier conversation we had about Concrete Cowboy, the notion is, yes, those performances are kind of distracting us in some ways from the idea that we're getting sort of a very traditional, urban-centric kind of coming-of-age story. And we know what to expect from those stories because we've seen them time and time before. And in a lot of ways, it feels like John Singleton gave us the template to a certain extent, or at least kind of codified what we know of that template with this film. It was his first film. He made it straight out of film school. It was in his early 20s. He ended up getting 2 Academy Award nominations for this, the screenplay. And then also he was the youngest and the first African-American director nominated in the category. And as I talked about it for our time capsule on Fox 19, I didn't quite think of how apt this film really is as a time capsule. Because again, you've got all of those elements, but you also have to look at the fact that you've got an amazing cast in this film as well. Academy Award winners and nominees are kind of all up and down the entire cast here. You've got Lawrence Fishburne, Angela Bassett, Cuba Gooding Jr., Regina King is in there. I mean, it's such a rich cast, and everyone kind of does what they need to do, in terms of giving us this story. And yes, we're getting those tropes that we would understand. And it's curious to me now, 30 years later, because at the time when it first came out, I have to admit, I wasn't exactly feeling it, because I was concerned about the idea that, we're getting another stereotypical look at Black life in the hood. And it was kind of like, you're going to go from this film to eventually you're going to get Menace to Society. And there was a lot of talk and a lot being written about these films that were trying to, in some ways, kind of boost them up beyond just the tropes that were there. But what happened is, again, 30 years later, we do end up getting a film like Concrete Cowboy that gives us, or kind of operates on that framework, but then is able to find something else about it. Like, again, I keep going back to how I compared and talked about Concrete Cowboy being a film about love of culture and family and everything else. That love was kind of in Boys in the Hood, and obviously it probably felt even more so for Singleton because it was his story.
Yeah.
But again, we might not have Concrete Cowboy as we have it now in the way that we have it now without this foundation being laid in the first place. So I think in a lot of ways, you have to give credit where credit is due, and the passion and everything else that Singleton put into this kind of plays out through his career moving forward. We saw that same kind of passion and interest in these particular characters in this world and poetic justice and in higher learning. He was still pushing and forcing us to look at elements of society that we weren't seeing on a regular basis. So there's like I said, there's just so much that's in this, and again, it kind of feels like this is probably a good time to kind of look back, because again, we lost him a couple of years ago, but he gave us a very interesting and diverse filmography as a writer and director, and again, this is where it all started.
Very nice. Boys in the Hood. Do you know if that's streaming anywhere or where people might be able to find that?
You can get it through Amazon Prime, and I want to say it might be available through that is the only place.
And you can renting it through Amazon for $2.99. That's the only place you can find it.
Yeah, because I wasn't sure about that, but yeah.
Well, there you go. Boys in the Hood, if you want to check it out, is available for rent at all the platforms. It does say that it is available with Sling, if you have a Sling subscription, but I'm not sure about that because I've never used Sling, so I don't know what that means. But yes, should be able to rent, if nothing else. Well, we did it, guys. We managed to cast some pod today. Congratulations to all of us. For accomplishing the goal we set out to accomplish. Thank you so much for joining us today for Sif Pop. It is part of the Studio DNA podcast network. You can find out more about other shows on the network at studiodna.media or by searching Studio DNA in your podcast player. Huge thanks to Andrew for hanging out again today.
Thank you, buddy.
Big thanks to producer Phil for producing the audio and video show.
Bye, Phil.
And a big thank you to Drew for putting together the graphics for the show.
Big clap.
And thank you to TT for hanging out with us today. TT, where would you like people to check you out online? Where do you want people to go?
Yeah, it's easy. It's terrencetodd.com is my blog. It's got everything archived. And I'm actually now just into my second podcast myself with Critical Reflections. So I'm gonna have links for that on the podcast coming up. I mean, on my blog coming up pretty soon as well too. So that's the home for everything TT.
Well, TT, we love having you on again. Check him out at terrencetodd.com. All your links will be there for what you want to check out. Much love and gratitude to our Sif Pop members as well for giving monthly to make Sif Pop a real thing. Support starts at $3 a month. One of the levels, you get all the bonus episodes, and there's other fun perks there as well for being a Sif Pop member. You can check that out at patreon.com/SifPop. Lots of ways to connect with podcasts. You can leave a comment, a rating, or a review at Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen. Or you can email us at feedback@sifpop.com. And finally, if you're having a good time, your movie-loving friends will probably like the show too. So make sure you let them know about it and that listening is much easier than falling asleep with a horse in the room. We will be back next week. Not exactly sure what we're going to be reviewing, but we will be here to review it, and we will see you then. Bye. Thank you to our live audience as well. Edmund J. Bourgeois, some guy named Andrew Ormsby, popping in a link on the Facebook chat in case anybody wants to click and see what he was talking about.
It's a virus.
Oh, yes. Yeah. Of course totally. It is. Of course it is. I should have known that.
Yeah. No, it's the link to that Amy Winehouse song. So,
thanks for hanging out with us.
Yeah.
Will, yes, I am watching Falcon and the Winter Soldier, and I think it barely winks at this idea. We'd have to have a further conversation as to what we're talking about. But what the villains in Winter Soldier are talking about how when people came back, resources became less. Basically, the same thing Thanos was trying to deal with has now reversed itself. Yeah. And so they are saying that, we had it good because resources, that kind of thing. So it's not saying that they made a bad choice. It's just saying that their choice has consequences. And so Falcon and the Winter Soldier are trying to, stop them, that kind of thing. It's kind of winking at it, but it's not really dealing with it. Because again, to really deal with it, you'd have to put into question all the sacrifices that were made and all that kind of stuff for something that may or may not have been morally ambiguous.
And
So,
all the people that were in airplanes when they got snapped, and then when they got brought back, they just fell.
You know
to
what
their
people will
death.
say though? You know what people will say though? This because I brought that up. Because Hulk used the word safely returned, that it put people in safe positions, and so that's how people will respond to those specific questions. My thing is, how do you return people safely psychologically? How do you return people, safely to a world that's moved on, from them for 5 years? But anyways,
yeah,
that is a bigger conversation to have at a later date.
I could totally go down a rabbit hole talking about the philosophical implications of the snap.
Yeah, totally. The blip, as they call it.
The blip, yeah.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate